Okay, and
I just wanted to.
John has joined us, and you're the 10th person, so you and Ben are going to be observing. Go ahead, Fred.
I just wanted to point out the Rich has pointed out some concerns, some planning concerns that we would be looking at in other projects on a historic demolition relocation. Our primary purpose for this initial evaluation to determine whether it becomes a DRI is the historic nature of the building. So that's really what we should be focusing on for this.
That's as far as we, yes, that's as far as we get at this level. We look at those other concerns if the commission votes to concur and to make this a DRI and have a public hearing. Go ahead, Kate.
For what it's worth, the facade of that house looks remarkably similar to the facade on my own house, which dates from the early 1850s. So I would agree that this house is a lot older than 1920, and I would be concerned about altering of the windows and sizing and things like that.
Okay, well, let us hear from Mr. Ahern or his representative. Are you doing it, Patrick, or is?
I am, and then Isabella has some drawings that she would like to put up on the screen as well. Okay, so the first thing I would like to say is we're not proposing any demolition of either the 1800s or 1920, whatever you want to call it, structure. We're simply picking it up, moving it about 50 feet and turning it around to fit on the site in a way that lines up with the road and the driveway coming in. There's a 1996 addition off to the side that is being removed. And if you look at our diagram that's just on the screen, you can see in the light blue to the right, that's the historic house. And then there's the pinkish color addition that was from 1996. And what we're proposing to do is to spin the house around and to preserve the front facade and the side elevations, not changing the window size openings, basically keeping the house the way it looks today. And then at the rear of the historic house, creating some new additions. So if you look at this drawing at the top, you can see that the existing facade, as Kate just described it, is being preserved, as are the side elevations, and that the new work is basically coming at the rear of the existing house. So we're not demolishing the house at all. We're just picking it up and rotating it and moving it over about 50 feet, all within the setback allowed areas, also out of the 100-year storm. And as such, the only change to the windows is basically when the new addition comes off the back.
And so will any of the windows in the front facade of the existing building be changed?
No, as you can see, they're exactly the same. They would be replaced with new replacement windows, but the size of the opening stays exactly the same. All the trim detail stays the same. It'll be restored as required, and reshingled, but the architecture is as it exists today on 3 sides of the house. And that the addition that was put on in 1996 on the right side is removed, and that when that addition is removed, there's a French door basically that gets installed, as you can see. Basically right there. So, and by turning the house around, as you come in the driveway, you're now looking at the front of the house versus the side of the house. So in terms of site orientation, we think it's a much better solution. But I think as Fred was saying, I think the big issue for today is, are we demolishing an existing house of historic value? The answer is no.
Okay, any commissioner questions of Patrick? Not hearing it.
Doug, I do have a
Yeah.
question, but I think it's been answered. So the 1996 edition is that portion of the house that's, I don't know if it's sliders or windows.
Yes, yes,
So, yeah, so we're gonna get rid of the ugly portion of the house and save the original house?
yes.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Fred also has his hand up, Doug.
Go ahead, Fred.
Yes, Patrick, I can't quite tell from the elevation. So on the part that's going to join the new house, is that some sort of, is there an elevation of that?
Yes.
That's what the top elevation is, sir?
No, this is existing. Isabella, if you could show him the elevation from the front of the house, as we rotate it, the front of the house, showing to Fred where the addition comes in. So no, back to the front. There we go. There we go. So the new addition is basically to the right and set way back.
Right, but so you have some sort of breezeway, hallway connection.
Yes,
Between-
yes,
That's
Yes.
what I'm interested in is what that facade looks like.
okay. Let's,
You know,
Isabella, if
that
you,
side of the house.
sure.
Before we move
There-
on,
It's a flat roof addition, if you will, with a
Okay,
little railing, so that the house is expressed. In other words, the historic house, its identity is expressed, and then everything else is secondary to that.
and it's in the center of the mass of that
Yeah,
facade?
yes.
well, not the one you see on the screen, the center is not the historic part. I think it's the left side, isn't it?
Yes,
What I'm saying, Doug, is that this little addition here comes off the middle of the historic structure in the back.
Yeah,
So-
I understand that.
It
on the
makes it
back of the house, yes,
right. It makes it the least visible.
correct.
Yeah,
It's
and then
behind the house.
and then there's the rather large addition behind it that's connected by like the
Right.
cross through. Okay. Got it. Any other questions from commissioners?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Christina.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Do you have a picture of either a photograph or a model of how do I express the neighborhood?
It's basically, it's outside of Herring Creek Farm. It's open, rural, open land.
And it is Sandplains grasslands.
Out beyond our property. Our property is not in the conservation area.
You mean it's not in permanently preserved?
Correct. And that
It-
where we're putting the house, rotating it around, we're outside the 100-foot zone, 100-foot zone as well. And this was all reviewed by the Conservation Commission in Edgartown. And was
I'm
approved.
familiar with them, yeah.
Right. I know you are. Many hats.
But as you know, well, fewer than one might think. Say a little bit more, if you can, about the protection of not the Nature Conservancy. We know that the Nature Conservancy is sort of the monitor of the Sandplains grasslands down there. And this, as Rick said earlier, they're very unusual in Massachusetts. They used to be more usual. Can you say a little bit about where this, as you move the house and add on to it,
We actually moved.
the
moved
activity in the
further away.
property
Yeah.
will be where in relation to the open fields and I mean, the activity of people and horses and cars and.
Right. So Patuxent Cove Road is up to the north here. And
Got it.
that's a perimeter road that runs around Herring Creek Farm.
Right,
Out,
The-
so,
yeah.
this is not part of Herring Creek Farm, this parcel.
no,
No, it's
that,
separate.
that's
So,
clear.
right, so you have Herring Creek Farm protected conservation up to the north, if you will, and then off to the right, I'll call it east, but it's quite different. All of that is open preserved land, as well as at the bottom is all open preserved land. And this parcel is kind of independent and separate from all the preserved open spaces in the land around it. There's a number of buildings on the site. There's a little barn down off to the bottom of the page,
Yeah,
which is staying. There's a guest house, which is staying, which we're not doing anything with for the moment. There's an existing garage that's kind of in the setback, which is being removed. Not historic garage. And basically, the front of the house is basically looking out to the field to the right.
mhm,
But the way the roads work and the driveway and the access roads within the site, in effect, you're really not engaged with the other buildings. So our intent of rotating the house was, one, to have its identity and on three sides expressed as the antique house, and also have it relate to the existing guest house that's there. So there's a nice dialogue between the two. And then that allowed us to put a small pool between them. So kind of a homestead idea allows us to preserve the historic house, gives it a better identity on the site when you arrive on the site, and have it open on three sides, where the 1996 edition with the sliding glass doors is attached to the side of the historic house, which we would remove and have the house
yeah,
read as historic. So we think it's a really good solution that we are preserving the historic house, giving it a stronger identity on the site, removing the sliding glass door 1996 edition, and then just have a very tenuous connector, little flat roof connector, breezeway, if you will. So then the new house, the new portion of the house is expressed independently of the historic house.
Okay, Kate Putnam.
This is more a question of process. I've noticed that on other things that we've looked at, we've asked for a town historic commission to provide their opinion. Is that something that we would do in this circumstance? Doug, you're probably better equipped to answer that than anybody else.
I'm not sure that we, land use planning, would necessarily do that. We could. I would think that if certainly if the commission voted to concur with the referral and make this a DRI, it could request the historic commission to render an opinion, or we could request that be done for consideration at the MVC concurrence review of this. I have no idea how long that would take or what the applicant's time frame is. But we could ask for it either way. Fred, you're next.
Yes, I think in this case, obviously, we've had various procedures depending on what is being asked. Since this is strictly a relocation, and there's a second section that this does not trigger, which I don't believe, which is the renovation of more than 25% of a historic structure, also a concurrence review. So it looks like they're well within the 25% of the historic part of this structure that they would be renovating to make the attachment to the building. So, the times, I believe, when we have asked for historic commission help is when somebody asked to actually demolish a structure, which isn't the case here. So it would seem to me the real question, and again, the only question that we're really supposed to be asking in this term is this a historic structure, and is it going to be preserved? I think that's the point of this item, is to make sure that any potentially historic structure is preserved.
Christina? Okay, Brian?
Yeah, and I think I agree with the road Fred was traveling down, and I think that this meets our criteria for not being something that we need to review. They're not demolishing anything that's historic. They're preserving it, and I would say that we do not need to have a DRI on this project.
Okay, is that a motion to recommend not concurring?
Yes, it is.
I would second that. And I would further add that it looks like the town of Edgartown has the environmental issues well in hand here. And they wouldn't be part of a historic demolition relocation referral anyway. When we have those DRIs, we're very circumscribed about what we can look at when we do that DRI. So in fact, those would go to the Edgartown Conservation Commission.
Anything further from anyone?
Was that a second by Fred?
Yeah, it was. Kate has her hand up, has a real hand up. Did you want to say something, Kate? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't move fast enough. I'm sorry.
All right.
The cursor wasn't cooperating.
Real hands count also.
Thank you. I try to use the little
No
thingy.
problem.
The house strikes me, the original house strikes me as being dwarfed by the addition to it, at least in the pictures that have been shown to us. And so I am uncomfortable with the impact that has on the historicity of the house, the original house. So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't agree with Brian and Fred. I would want to see this reviewed.
Okay. That's a point worth making.
Can I respond, Doug? I do understand that, but that's.
Brian, we'll go in order. Christina and then Brian.
Yeah, I was going to speak to the bigger picture, if you will, that Kate talked about. And there are two pieces to it. One, I do think that LUPC should, sort of as a matter of friendliness, professional friendliness, when we have a really historic building outside of the Edgartown Historic District, we're assigned by 831, our law, to look at it and to either approve it or not. I think making it a regular part of asking the Historic District Commission, it's not out of what they think of it or do they have suggestions. We actually did that to one house, I believe, next to a house on the harbor. And that was just outside the Historic District. So I think we should have a general policy that it's okay to ask, and it was a good thing to ask the Historic District Commission to review or at least to give comments on this kind of situation when it's outside their district and in ours. I also had a fairly, and my apologies to Patrick, the architect, that it could look as if the historic house, and it is the pattern of little houses like that down on Herring Creek Farm, on the edges of Herring Creek Farm, is pretty strong. That this little house will be lost in the visualizing of what was a traditional historic house on Herring Creek Farm. I don't think we can tackle that directly, but I think that we should be aware of looking at the final proposal in the future, a situation like this, where the intention to keep a little historic build, well, the historic building. Patrick, I appreciate that you got 3 facades sort of open. Perhaps it will be not as swallowing up.
Yeah,
as-
no, I think, you know, I understand your point. And I think the
Thanks.
true elevations don't really help describe it. What we're really trying to do three-dimensionally is not only preserve the historic house, give it its own identity, and then think of it as kind of a series of smaller buildings that have been connected over time. So that each one of these buildings pieces, like a Monopoly game, although not a Monopoly game,
Yeah,
have the same pitch, the similar scale. So it's a
oh,
series of pieces.
that's all clear, yeah, yeah.
So I think that was the intent, to say, you know, our client needs a bigger house. He wants to preserve the historic house. And that the solution is to basically, there's multiple buildings on this site already. So how do we create a village-like experience using the scalability of the
Yeah.
historic house, and then doing the subtle connectors to make it all tell one story of, maybe these were 3 houses on the site that were moved there at one point in time.
Thank
And then maybe-
thank you,
and then maybe they
Patrick.
got connected.
You've explained it quite
Okay.
well.
Okay, I think Christina and Kate have raised valid points that commissioners can take into consideration with regard to how they vote on this. Brian, and then perhaps
Just,
we can
just
vote.
one final note, Doug, I appreciate
Yep.
it.
Go right ahead.
What's in front of us is not whether or not we like the final product here. What's in front of us tonight is whether or not we believe the demolition of this would be suitable for DRI. There is no demolition, so I'd see no grounds for us moving forward, and I would call the vote.
Well, it's more than just a demolition. It's a demolition or relocation. So it clearly is triggered, although it is a concurrence review. It's a mandatory referral with a concurrence review because they are relocating it, albeit only a few feet. They are relocating it so that it meets the criteria in the checklist. The impact of that relocation in the context of what the applicant proposes to build, I believe, is a valid concern with regard to the historic nature of the structure. That all said, commissioners may find that it isn't sufficient to require concurrence and a DRI. That said, unless there are further comments, let's vote on it. All in
Doug
motion-
Tripp has his hand up.
Okay. Go ahead, Tripp.
Tripp, you gotta unmute. Tripp, you gotta unmute.
I'm sorry. The reason I have to agree with Brian's take on this, because the reason we were all called together was a little different than what this is turning into. And I don't think that's exactly what we should be doing. I don't know if you can interpret that a different way, but we haven't hurt the house at all. And we've made it, something that's more comfortable for the customer. He's not hurting the property or hurting the situation.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying if I can get there, that's what I need. Okay, because the way we vote is we wave our hands so Doug can see them. The motion is to recommend to the full commission that we not concur in this referral, which means it will be sent back to the town. All in favor of that motion, kindly raise your hand where I can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed, kindly raise your.
Peter had his hand up too. He was just
Oh,
going.
I'm sorry, Peter. I didn't know if that was you or the dog. What can I say? Okay, that's 6 in favor of that motion. All opposed, kindly raise your hand where I can see it. 1. Christina, are you voting? There's 1 opposed. 6 to 1. And Christina, you are muted, so I don't know what you're doing. Oh, abstaining.
Yes, on the motion, but also make a note to us that we need to think some about this kind of project in the future, or what it might, not this project, but this kind of okay would lead to
Okay, and
another time.
so you were voting in favor of the motion, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the vote was 7-1. We will report that. This will be scheduled for a concurrence review, and land use planning will report that it recommended 7-1 by a vote of 7-1 to not concur and send it back to the town. I believe we have completed the entire agenda at 6:06, I'm happy to say. And let's all root for Fred's irises, and we should be seeing them any day now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.